Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight TV Edition. I am Peter, that is Tim, and we are working our way through Tales From the Crypt, the original HBO anthology show. It's going to be Season 5, Episode 3. It's called Forever Ambergris. Apologies if I butchered that title. I am not overly familiar with that word. But, yeah, so this is Season 5, Episode 3. What is this episode? This episode is about photographers who sort of, the sort of photographers who go off to like war zones and take photos of like people who are dead or soldiers shooting or crying mothers by their child's grave and all those kind of things. And one is Steve Buscemi. He's like the younger guy, which is weird because now he's the older guy because because I saw him like last year and something, and he's in his like mid-60s now. he's an old dude, which means even at this time he wasn't even that young, but. Regardless, he's the younger sort of apprentice photographer, and then he's with the old timer Dalton, who used to be the hot shot, but now everyone sort of thinks his best days are behind him, and they're coming back from a shoot. Steve Buscemi's getting all the praise, Dalton's getting none of it. Dalton meets his girlfriend, he's kind of jealous of everything he does, how he is. So he finds out about this village. They're going to this war zone, and they find out about this village. Dalton finds out that there's this village that is completely radiated, and anyone who goes there will just die. They'll not even come back, they'll just die. So he actually tricks Steve Buscemi into going to this war village in the hopes that he's going to die, and he can take the photos that he got there, claim them as his own, maybe go back and steal his girlfriend, once he's dead. That's his plan. That's what he's doing. So, evil scumbag, basically. Very egocentric. So, that is this episode of Tales. I'll ask the question that I always do. Tim, did you enjoy Forever Ambergris?
My first reaction after watching was just like, okay, yeah, that was fine, whatever. I watched it late last night, though, and kind of just sitting on it a little bit and rethinking about it this morning, I'm kind of like, no, wait, fuck this episode. This sucked. It's definitely not the worst, but I don't know. It's pretty dumb. I do love Steve Buscemi. I thought he was great. I thought the other lead actor, I forget the actor's name, but I thought he was pretty bad.
Roger Daltrey.
Yeah, he was super boring, and I didn't really like his character because he doesn't start off like seeming like that bad of a guy, and it doesn't seem like there's enough of a shit, what's the word, I guess like justification for turning into like an evil murdering it seemed like obviously you never get the feeling that he's a saint, but in the beginning it did seem like he was friendly, like a genuine dude.
It also felt like he was he would make fun of his own photos. He joked about the fact that it wasn't very good anymore. He didn't see, certainly even if he's a bit disgruntled, and it was a bit of a leap that halfway through the episode he's immediately going, yes, I'll send him to his death. Yeah. yes, stroke my beard,
And it's also one of those things where it's like, I guess this is a world where combat photography is like this big, huge thing. Like, I'm sure there are people that are famous for that, but it's one of those things where they make it seem like, ooh, this is big business, and I don't know, maybe I'm just not in that world enough, but it felt like kind of weird.
I mean, to give it some credit here, it never feels like it's big outside of these characters' perspectives. It's almost like it's just because it's their field, they want to be the best kind of thing. So I'll give them a bit credit for that. I have to echo some other sentiments though. I stuck up for last week's quite a bit because I thought I thought the cast elevated it, where I still actually quite enjoyed it for the most part. Sure. This week's I did not feel that way. There were obviously some over the top sort of gory moments later on in the episode when he does get radiation sickness and his eyes are popping out and stuff, but
that was cool. Yeah.
For the most part, this was a slog. I did not care for the characters. It was doing all that weird thing where Dalton's over for dinner and he actually,
oh my god,
so they're sitting for dinner, they're talking for a while, and then we have this really just kind of awkwardly drawn out scene where Steve Buscemi's like, hey, dance with my girlfriend. He's not had a woman in ages. Dance with her, make him feel better, honey. Because that's not weird. So he's dancing with her. That goes on for a bit. Then he's watching them have sex through the door, the crack in the door. He's watching them, and she realizes he's watching them, and then she goes downstairs and confronts him about it, but doesn't doesn't like get mad. That doesn't like tell him he shouldn't have been doing that. She just kind of weirdly shifts into, oh yeah, take care of my boyfriend when you're over in the war zone. Like, you know, make sure he comes back okay.
Maybe it's because we watched The Room recently, but I kind of expected him to like pull like a Denny, just like jump in the middle of bed with him.
I like to watch you guys.
Oh, Dalton, 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 Dalton. But yeah, the girlfriend, like the girlfriend character, Bobby, is super weird. Like, you're right, it is like weird for Steve Buscemi to be like, hey, come on, dance with my girlfriend. But you know, it's fine. I can see that. And like he said, like, oh, I think he's a little drunk. And but sure, you know, if you do that, you go over there and you do like a goofy little dance or whatever. But he immediately goes over there, and like within 2 seconds, I thought, like, are they gonna fuck? Like, they're so close together. Like, their lips were practically touching. She's speaking very breathy.
Very intimate slow dance kind of setting.
Yeah.
Which Steve Buscemi was very happy about. He didn't seem bothered by it at all. He was bringing in more bottles of wine. He was like, oh, everyone, you having fun, Dalton? You having fun? He's like, yeah, I'm having a blast. Yeah, there's a ball.
Which and I think it would have been fun or interesting to have a plot where, you know, you start to see the gears turning of this guy being like, oh, why does this young, you know, upshot kid like get everything, and like why does he get this woman and stuff.
I think there needed to be more stuff where he was like losing work because of him. There had to be more things happening that was making you maybe convinced that he was in a bad enough place and he was looking so much better that he would start to contemplate these ideas. And obviously, at this part of the episode, when they're in the dinner and the dance, and like, I was like, oh, really? Is this turn into a love triangle episode? Because it felt like it was, and it isn't really. The love triangle kind of is kind of an afterthought, because he just kind of wants to do that afterwards.
Yeah, and the problem is that there's no subtlety about it, because like from the moment they meet, you're like, oh, these guys are gonna have sex. Like the way they're talking to each other, and
this is the thing though. I mean, as much as I think when they first meet, the way she looks at him implies that she is kind of flirty, but everything else does not imply that. Even though something does kind of happen at the end of the episode, it's all just a ruse because she's trying to like get back at him for killing her boyfriend. You know, it's all just a scheme to get him infected, so that he dies as well. So actually, looking back at that scene where they first interact, it's actually really weird, because she actually doesn't have any of those intentions for the rest of the episode. So
it's really strange. And it just feels very like we've always had like nudity and sex stuff in Tales from the Crypt, but I feel like the last like season or so, it's gone like full on like, oh, this is like kind of feeling raunchy now. Like it feels pretty like like seedy, the you know how fast like the women are getting topless and like the sex scenes and stuff.
I will give it some credit though, because the other thing I've noticed about the last season or so, I'm only pointing this out because for a long time it was the opposite, but at least the Crypt Keeper segments seem related to the plot of the episodes right now.
True,
and they've been like that for a while. But I remember for an extended period, and I think in like season 3, maybe some of 2, maybe early 4 as well, there was a long string of where his segments were just about random things that had nothing to do with what the plot of the episode was. Whereas here he was making like photography jokes and stuff, and so it was tying into what the episode was, at least.
Yeah, those were good.
So find positives where you can.
Yeah, definitely. And again, like you said, the special effects at the end. So once Steve Buscemi goes and takes those photographs, and actually this was kind of weird. Again, I don't know anything about the what do you call it, like combat photography profession, but I feel like these people, I don't think they're in the army. I think they're like civilians, and so I think if you're in a combat zone, I don't think people would just be like, oh, you want to go to some other village and take some pictures? Sure, okay. Like, yeah, go off by yourself. We'll meet back up later.
That was strange, although nothing was as strange. When he comes back later that night, and Dalton's disappointed at first because he's like, oh, he survived, he's fine, what's going on? And then it turns out that the sickness just doesn't kick in until he's asleep. But he has one of the weirdest lines of dialogue I have ever heard in anything ever. As he's going to sleep, Steve Buscemi says out loud, I can't remember the start line actually, but it's like, war sure isn't pretty, but it does help me sleep. I'm like, what? What? What do you mean it helps you sleep? How can it possibly help you sleep? Like, either you've seen horrific things so you can't sleep because of them, or there's literally the noise of gunfire and bombardment happening, and maybe you can't, sleep through the noise. How does it help you sleep? What sort of weirdo is this guy that war helps him sleep? That's insane. And here's the thing: is like, because Steve Buscemi's such a nice guy throughout the whole episode, there's no real point where he deserves anything, and the only time he says something where it's almost like, oh, maybe that could have inspired something, he's already done the bad thing where he sent him to the village to die. It's when he comes back, he almost slips out like a really bad insult, where he's like, oh, everything there was so mesmerizing and horrific. Even you could take some good photo. I mean, it was great, is what I'm saying. He almost says something bad and he stops himself. And I'm like, maybe that should have been before he made the choice to send him to his death, because maybe that would have helped the inspiration, the motivation a little bit. There's things there. I don't know, but
he's maybe one of the nicest characters we've had in the Tales from the Crypt universe, and he probably has one of the most gruesome deaths.
Oh, yeah, his eyes are popping out, bits are falling off. And then eventually he's shot. Dalton gets scared that he's going to spread the disease to him, so he shoots him with one of the machine guns.
Yeah.
I don't want to insult Steve Buscemi, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
I like Steve Buscemi.
Oh no, I like Steve Buscemi as well, but I don't want to insult his appearance. But I feel like every time I see Steve Buscemi with a wife or a girlfriend and something, she's always very attractive, and I always look at Steve Buscemi and go, you know what, I love this guy, but attractive he ain't.
Well, I think that was actually one thing I kind of liked about the episode is he talks about that with his girlfriend, and she did actually give a reason. She was like, oh, well, I think he's such a good photographer, and I really admire the beauty he's able to find in these dark, subject matters and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's interesting that they did actually kind of address that.
Yeah, no, it was that first moment where Dalton came to the house and we first seen her, and she opened the door, and I'm like, what, really, Steve Buscemi's with her? No, don't get me wrong, I'm sure Steve Buscemi in real life has a lovely wife, I'm sure he does.
I'm sure, yeah.
But I don't know, it's just one of these things where, he's not a pretty guy, he just isn't, right? He's got a weird face.
It does kind of make me miss those kind of actors and stuff, though. I feel nowadays everyone is looks like the same generic pretty boy, and it's
Tim, that's why they come to YouTube for us, because we represent the non-pretty element of society.
Well, speak for yourself, but
oh dear, oh my. No wonder you're getting an ego. Tim's on IMDb now. He's got an IMDb credit. He played a backdoor Yeti at a party.
Well, I don't know if I like the phrase backdoor, but
oh, sorry, background. I didn't even mean that, but that was funny. That was not intentional, but I'm glad I said it.
Yes. So, once that movie comes out, I'll be plugging the shit out of it
because you get a starring role. Your big debut. Come see the movie that Tim's in. Question: do you see her face, or is it a full mask that you can't?
Oh, it's a full body costume.
Okay, just curious.
My friends are kind of making a low budget horror movie, and they said on a call hey, if anyone has any Halloween costumes, we're filming a Halloween party scene. And I made the brilliant choice of saying, I have a full Yeti costume.
So it wasn't there was multiple in the same costume. You could point you out easily. You could say, that was you. Yeah. Right, cool. All right.
But yeah, that's it's always fun to stand around for 5 hours in a full hot costume with movie lights all around, and in Los Angeles.
Hey, standing under movie lights, in any, even in the winter, it gets too warm.
Yeah.
It really does. Movie lights get really, if you got blondes and redheads, Jesus Christ, they get warm fast. Just for anyone who doesn't know, blondes and redheads are actual terms for lights that are used on movie and TV sets. Just in case you think I'm being weird. But that's the actual terms that are used.
Yeah, but I think I might have found my calling, though, because I don't think I'm a very good actor, but if I can just wear a bunch of crap where you can't see my face and I don't have to say anything, I can do this.
That's
And
more of a mannequin, not an actor.
I'm okay with that.
Oh dear. Do we have any more to say about the actual episode of Tales from the Crypt where we're supposed to be talking about?
So yeah, and then it gets very gory with Steve Buscemi's death, and then Dalton comes back,
Takes
breaks the
credit.
news,
Yeah,
yeah,
takes
takes
credit for
credit,
all the photos.
and then ends up it's we couldn't have just one sex scene in the episode. It's Tales from the Crypt, for God's
Of
sake, so
course,
I
yeah.
had to end with another sex scene.
Yeah, but
Um,
somehow she got a letter from Steve Buscemi with the postcards saying exactly how he was killed. Now, it was
yeah,
fine up until a point, right? Because when he was saying, "Oh, he tricked me into going here and I was sick," because he was still alive when he knew that for a little bit. So I'm okay. He could have written that, I suppose, right? But then he actually says, "And then Dalton shot me," and I'm like, "Wait a minute,
yeah.
how did he write
Uh,
that?"
I was a little confused by that.
Did one of the soldiers who weren't happy that he did, because the soldiers who were there weren't pleased with what Dalton did. They weren't pleased with the fact that he shot him. They're like,
So
so maybe one of them
the
sent her a letter.
well, my initial reaction was like earlier in the episode, she has like this weird line where she says something along the lines like, "Oh, if he died, I would feel it," or something like that. I don't know. It was like a weird kind of throwaway thing, but I was kind of like, oh, I didn't know. Like, it sounded like she was saying like they have some type of psychic connection or something.
Oh, I didn't get
Uh,
that. No.
but I mean, that's a little bit of a stretch, but who knows? Who cares?
Yeah. So she starts falling apart while she's on top of him having sex,
Yeah.
uh, and
Which again looked really cool.
it
But
did, yeah, and he was getting covered in blood, and then he goes to the bathroom and his nose falls off. Which ties into a story the soldiers told about someone who got sick and
yeah.
that the nose get eaten off by bugs in the middle of the night. So it kind of called back to something. But no, honestly, I think the biggest problem with this episode is that I just don't think the characters are that interesting, especially Dalton, the one who's kind of driving everything. He's the one who's making
Yeah.
all the choices and doing things. I just don't think he's that interesting, and as a result, the entire episode's kind of dull to get through. So
I think the problem with some of these episodes is like they're just like stretched too much. Like even like a 25-minute episode or whatever is kind of too long. Like if you want a 5 or 10 minute little short thing, fine, whatever. But if you're gonna drag it out, you're gonna have to have like really interesting or charming characters or something, and this didn't really do it.
yeah, because even though I like Steve Buscemi, I don't think his character had that much going for him.
Yeah.
He wasn't that interesting. It was just kind of what he was, and that was it.
Yeah.
No, I can't recommend this one. I mean, it's not the worst episode ever, but it's definitely not one I'd enjoy. It's easily one I'd skip on a rewatch.
Yeah, I'd say if you're going through it for the first time and you want to watch every episode, sure. But if you're kind of hand picking the ones you want to watch, this is a easily skippable one.
Yep. So there you go. That is this week's Tales from the Crypt. So let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mild_fuzz. Get Tim on imdb.com.
Yeah.
If you want to support the channel, support the show, head over to patreon.com/milefuzztv. You can do that over there. There'll be a link to that in the corner, link in that description, and other useful links. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching. Keep watching Scary TV, guys. We'll see you next time.